People usually assume some weird incest happened somewhere, but it was all clear, just odd from a legal adoption standpoint. My parents were of no blood relation, just legal siblings, of which I'm now a legal sibling as well. No, this didn't happen in Alabama. People of Reddit who have had sex with an in-law or step-sibling or parent, what happened? How did you get into that situation? And did anyone find out? What up, bro? Thanks for coming to another storytime. I'm Andrew, your host. Since you're here, why not like the video, subscribe and ring the bell button. That way we won't miss any more storytimes together. And if you don't, I'll tell your step-sis you want to bang her. No more fooling around, let's start the stories. Come up with your own plot ideas, Pornhub. In high school, one of my close friends lost her virginity to her mid-30s step-brother and began a relationship with him. They didn't grow up together. I always felt like he was a bit sleazy and that he groomed her. We were about 16. The thing is, they're still together, 15 years later, with a kid and everything. It really tore their family apart for a while though. I know someone who got pregnant by a guy and then later married him. No problems yet. Then, though, the girl's mom and the guy's dad got together and had their own kid. So now the original couple has a brother together. The baby has a sister and brother married to each other, but they were married before any of the weird crap happened. One Christmas my uncle brought my future aunt-in-law over to meet everyone. I was 12 and she had big boobs, like, stupidly big boobs. I got binoculars as a gift as part of a kid's spy kit. I thought I was being so clever pretending to look around the room with them just so I could stealthily, she was sitting 10 feet away, get a full zoomed-in image of those lovely big boobies. I did this for like 30 minutes. Briefly, during high school, my girlfriend's parents were on the rocks, the mom was sleeping with another guy, and the family was in rough shape. So the dad's response was to go after my single mom. Next thing you know, my girlfriend's dad is having an affair with my mom, while the girlfriend's mom is having an affair with an old flame. They're going on double dates together, and the girlfriend and I are suddenly unofficial step-siblings. And yes, it was awkward, even though it really had nothing to do with us. Thankfully, it didn't last long, maybe a month. Her mom and dad reconciled and things went back to normal. There was one night they all came over to my mom's apartment with wine. We all drank, the mom and her fling went to a hotel, my mom and the dad went to bed, and then the girlfriend and I went to bed. That was weird. I did the deed with my mother-in-law once. It still makes me feel dirty when I think about it. I was separated from my wife at the time in the process of divorcing and went to my mother-in-law's house to help her with moving some furniture. We ended up sitting around after I helped and had a few cocktails and talked about my separation to her daughter. Fast forward to midnight and 6 drinks later and all of a sudden I'm looking at her with her jeans to her ankles and bent over the kitchen table. I swear to this day I really don't know who made the first move or how it got to that point. It was crazy. The next day she calls me and plays the whole "I had so much to drink, I don't even remember last night" card. I get it. I know it was her way of pretending like it never happened, and I was perfectly okay with doing just that. I saw her numerous times after that, and neither of us acted strange. We just erased it and acted like nothing ever happened. At the time I was about 30 and my mother-in-law was about 50. I've never told anyone until now. My dad had started dating following a messy divorce and, after being very coy about his activities for a few months, decided to introduce me to his girlfriend's family. We all traveled to a relative's country house and had a big party. The wine flowed pretty liberally. Eventually it was just me and the new girlfriend's daughter who remained. We'd been getting on pretty well all night, and we were both quite drunk at this point. I stood, deciding I'd had enough fun for one night, and kissed her goodnight. One thing led to another, and we slept together. This kept up for a few months. I'm not sure if Dad ever grasped why I was always so excited to visit his girlfriend's place, but I was there in a flash if the invitation was offered. Fast forward 6 or 7 years, and Dad married his partner. I was a groomsman. Now I like to throw "I have never banged my sister" in games of never have I ever. Don't regret it at all. We were in our teens and we're actually good friends now. Edit. I know this all sounds a lot like the plot of a certain type of video found online, but I suppose miracles can still happen. Not my stepson, but my son's best friend from high school. They had just graduated, and my son had moved off to college. His friend needed a place to stay, so he rented my son's room while he was away. My son's friend was a very good tenant. He always paid his rent on time, kept the house clean, and helped out with the man jobs around the house. It was about 6 weeks after he moved in when I felt that he was having thoughts about me. His demeanor changed, his sentences were short, and he couldn't keep eye contact. I would make a risque double entendre, and he would get visibly red. I had divorced my husband back when my son was still in high school and never really found time to start another relationship, so the thought kind of turned me on. So one night, when he came home late from a party a little tipsy, I let him know I knew. He was quite embarrassed at first, but I told him it was all right to take off his pants and lie down. He laid down on the couch, and I grabbed his ankle and knee and began tugging it towards myself. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Pulling your leg," I answered, just like everyone reading this post. Throwaway for obvious reasons. My biological mother died when I was about 5 years old. Dad remarried about 2 years later to a woman who had a daughter who was the same age. We get along pretty well for the most part, and years go by and nothing happened. Sometime when we were both 13, my stepmom got in a car accident and died almost instantly. We all took it really hard, especially my dad. Dad started to drink and not be very fatherly to either of us. He was depressed and rarely ever talked to us, and in turn left my stepsister and I feeling despondent and unloved. One night I woke up to the sound of my stepsister crying. I went to her room to comfort her and calm her down. We both end up crying together and we just held each other for a long time. I kissed her and went to go and leave, but for some reason, don't really know why, we just kept kissing for a while. Eventually we just ended up having sex. I don't really know why we did it. We had never had any attraction to each other beforehand, and we certainly never planned on having sex. I think both of us just liked the idea of being close to someone. We hadn't felt the touch of someone we loved for so long that I think it was just a way of coping. In total we had sex probably 14 or 15 times over the course of about 2 years. After that we just stopped. I don't really know why. We just got over the feeling of being unloved, I guess. No one knows as far as I'm aware. It never negatively affected our relationship, and it isn't awkward between us. It was just something that happened. I'm the product of just such a situation. But it's even more convoluted than that. You know how everyone has 2 sets of grandparents, your father's parents and your mother's parents? Well, both sets of my grandparents divorced when my parents were just young kids, and then my father's father married my mother's mother. All of this was a decade or more before I was born. My paternal grandfather legally adopted my mother, she was about 9 years old at the time, and my father was raised by his mother and her subsequent husbands in a separate household, so my parents knew of each other's existence but weren't raised together. They met as late teens, got pregnant, married, divorced a few months later, and then I was born. Mom was already married to husband number 2 of 5 by the time of my birth, but that's a whole other story. I ended up being adopted by my grandparents by age 2. The ones that are my paternal grandfather and maternal grandmother, which makes me sort of a second-generational son, since they never had any direct kids with each other, just in their previous marriages. Odd side effects. I'm related to both sides of the family by blood, and I'm the only person in this situation, since everyone else can trace a lineage back to one set of grandparents or the other, but not both. Due to the adoption of my mother by my paternal grandfather, my parents were legal siblings, and due to me being adopted by my grandparents, it moves me up a generation, so I'm also legally siblings with my own parents. Heck, I'm even my own uncle. Never really grew up around my actual birth parents, but they are both great-grandparents to my own children. My adopted parents have already died, but being raised by Depression-era grandparents definitely made for a different upbringing, not to mention having lived on a boat for years, again, another long story. I've only had rudimentary discussions with my parents about what it was like for them in that situation. Apparently it was a bit of an uproar in the family, but it all worked out since I'm alive, I'm fairly intelligent, have all my fingers, and no weird tics or twitches. Best of all, due to their teenage hookups, they now still get to see each other at all family gatherings, weddings, graduations, etc. over 40 years later. And this situation made the seating chart at my own wedding a near impossible task due to me having 3 mothers and 6 fathers, mom, stepmom, adopted mom, father, adopted father and 4 stepfathers. While I was being raised into young adulthood, I tended to always relate more like a sibling with my birth parents than a parent-child relationship, but this has somewhat changed after the deaths of my adopted parents to a more grandparent-parent relationship. Just seems to make more sense and easier for my kids to relate to them as grandparents, since that's what they are by blood. Other odd side effects. I was raised as an only child even though I have several half-siblings. I was raised by the grandparents, my siblings by their birth parents, and I'm the youngest in my adopted generation, but the oldest in my blood generation. And due to the multiple marriages in my parents' generation, some of my half-siblings aren't related to the others. One brother and I share a father in common, other brother, sister and I share a mother, but all 3 have different fathers. So I'm the youngest and the oldest, have siblings but was an only child, depending on how you look at the situation. I've had people ask me what it was like to have such a weird background, but keep in mind this all happened before I was born or was too young to know the difference, so this is my form of normal. I've never known any other way a family should be set up until I started making my own. I like to think of it that I was wanted and loved by so many people they had to share. Edit. People usually assume some weird incest happened somewhere, but it was all clear, just odd from a legal adoption standpoint. My parents were of no blood relation, just legal siblings, of which I'm now a legal sibling as well. No, this didn't happen in Alabama, no actual incest, remember, I kid.
Like and subscribe for more funny, interesting, and scary r/ask Reddit videos.